I'm John Hazel, automation expert and business strategist.
And I'm Kevin Miller, software lead and seasoned podcaster.
And this is the Automate and Elevate podcast, where we help you build systems, create leverage, and scale your business.
On today's episode, we'll talk about the importance of just getting started. So, yeah, I mean, this is one of the most important things that you can do, period, is just getting started. A lot of people, I feel like they overthink and they're always in the planning phase and therefore they never start. So, like in your opinion, like how important is just taking initiative and just doing and not spending all your time planning? How important is that to you?
I mean, it's basically the number one most important thing because you can have great ideas all day, but if you don't execute, you're not going to see the results of it. So, this is like particularly an issue for me and personalities like mine. I'm an INTP on the Myers Briggs. And what that means is that introverted thinking is my driver function, which is all about accuracy. And then my co-pilot function is extroverted intuition, which is all about like exploring and patterning things out, right? And then I love what I'm describing is the car model from a website called Personality Hacker and a podcast. I found them originally on their podcast, and it's a great model for applying the Myers-Briggs into understanding yourself and actually being able to leverage it. So behind my co-pilot of extrovert intuition, which is exploration, is introverted sensing, which is memory. It's like being able to reflect on previous experiences and apply that data to what you're doing. And that is kind of like this 10-year-old archetype where so I can get stuck in this loop between the three of those things where I'm in paralysis of analysis. And I'm always like, the introverted thinking wants everything to be accurate. The introverted sensing is reflecting on previous mistakes and saying, how do we make sure we don't do that? And the extroverted intuition sometimes is just gets caught up like, oh, this would be cool, this would be cool, this would be cool, but then not executing because it's a perceiving function. It receives data, it perceives data, and it's not an executing function, right? Introverted thinking is actually the executing function, but because introverted thinking wants things to be perfect, that's where we get stuck in this analysis paralysis, right? So for me, it's vital. And it's important, by the way, just as a side note, to understand your personality and have that little bit of self-awareness so that you know what those traps are that you fall into and how to build coping mechanisms around those things.
Yeah, I know a lot of people, one of the traps for them is they want to create the perfect plan. They want to have all of the information before they get started because they think that it's gonna, lead to success. But a lot of times they get stuck in this phase forever there because you're never gonna have 100% information. You're never gonna know everything. So like, how do you break out of this particular mindset where you feel like everything has to be perfect before getting started?
Yeah, I think there's several different ways and several different elements to it, which is one, just realize that like nobody starts out perfect. I think what can happen, at least for me, a lot of times if I scroll on YouTube shorts a lot, other people, TikTok, whatever, but you scroll and you get used to looking at these videos sometimes where they've got 1 million likes or hundreds of thousands of likes. And you're used to kind of consuming in that realm. And then you compare yourself to that. So for me, for this podcast, right? Like I'm constantly listening to podcasts that have tens of thousands, 100,000, millions of listeners. And if I compare myself to them and try to be at that level right now, then we would just never get started because they're dumping, tens of thousands of dollars a month into production, which I don't have right now. So it's like, let's just get started on something. Stop comparing yourself with the top tier. Now, the good thing is that if you are, then that means that you understand that level of production value and you're like internalizing those things and thinking about how do I get to that level, which is great. But just realize there's a lot of levels before you get to that level. So maybe look at the people, if you're just starting out, on a podcast, on social media, whatever, like look at the people who have a small amount of influence and learn from them before you try to learn from the people that have a ton of influence. Just see what's the next level up. Stop trying to look 10 levels up. It's good to look 10 levels up to get vision and to think about that's where I'm headed, but then you need to focus on the next level right now. What's in front of you?
So I think another reason that a lot of people get stuck is because there's so much information, there's so many choices, there's so many things to pick between, and none of us wants to pick the wrong things. So therefore, people are always you know, weighing these different options, and they never feel the confidence to pick one, and that leads to them never getting started. So
Yeah.
when there's a lot of different choices, how do you whittle things down and just pick something and get started with it?
Yeah. I will talk, like, I'm not going to say that we don't spend any time analyzing. So I'll talk about that piece a little bit. I definitely spend time analyzing. It's just managing that tension, right? But the bottom line is you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So if you never take any shots, then you're going to miss them. And then also, if you take a shot and you succeed, you're 1 out of 1. And it's like, oh, great, I have 100% success rate. And then you might want to just stop there because you're like, well, I don't want to miss, I'm afraid I'm going to miss the next one. Or you do miss the next one and the next one. And you think, like, dang it, my first shot was great. Now I have a 33% ratio, right? So, but then you got to keep practicing. And then eventually you work that ratio back up, right? I've had this in one of the legs of my business where the first, specifically in the talent placement side, where the first person I placed was on my own side, in my own company, offshore, hiring out of the Philippines, and he is awesome, and I'm like so grateful to have him on my team. And then the next person I tried to hire for another person's company was awesome at first, and then kind of trailed off. And then another person I hired was excellent and still is excellent. And then the next one was kind of a rough experience. Like, did a great job at first, but then we ended up having to replace that person. And so it was like painful going through this, and it keeps going, right? But like, if I give up at that point, then it feels like, oh, maybe I didn't have something in the first place and I just need to quit now. And, but actually there's so much more to be gained. It's just like, yeah, that's how it goes sometimes. Sometimes your first hit is a is a home run, and then the next one and the next one and the next one you're striking out, and it's not a reason to quit. It's a reason to figure out an A/B test and say, what did I do better, the first time that I can do better next, that I can match next time? Where can I improve? Like, keep taking these iterative improvements, but you can't improve if you don't get started. So it's more important that you get started somewhere. Now, I didn't hire the reason my first hire was so successful was because I didn't just like throw spaghetti against the wall and see what stuck. I like followed a course. I was strategic about it. I put some level of an out, but I knew, like, okay, I got to get this thing started. So I spent like maybe 3 days like studying and researching and planning. And then I finally jumped in and just said, I'm gonna follow this process and see how it goes. Right. And then same thing happened recently with outbound sales. It's like I knew how to do outbound sales from a previous role, but with the new channel that I wanted to attempt it on, I didn't necessarily know how to do that. And I was having a hard time like putting money towards it. But I finally was like, all right, I'm just going to bite the bullet. I'm going to put some money towards this and I'm going to execute. And then in that process, I figured out, you know what? I think I want to change who my target audience is, right? Which, if I had waited until I felt perfect about who my target audience is, I would have never got started. But because I got started, now I started to remove the barriers and I started to clarify things. So a lot of times, you can only get so far with the analysis that happens in the before phase, and you start to get more data once you get started in order to be able to make better decisions down the road.
Yeah, I know. Like, you can never have perfect information. You can't just sit there and speculate and figure out every single outcome, because a lot of times when you start doing, unexpected things start to arise, and your plan a lot of times just goes out of the window. So Let's just say you do get started and nothing is going according to plan, like how you thought it was going to go. Like, how do you conduct yourself then when you're in like uncharted waters?
Yeah. You pivot and you pivot and you pivot as many times as it takes, right? And at some point, if it's like if people are suffering because of it, if it's like your client is having a bad experience, you need to do what's right to make it right, right? You need to figure out, hey, do I need to give them their money back? Do I need to what like, you need to make it right and have integrity. But before you jump to like giving somebody their money back, you should be trying to do everything you can to provide tremendous value, right? Now I'm talking in the client relationship there, but then um, you know, in this, the other instance I was talking about with doing outbound sales on social media, you just keep pivoting until you find the right thing. But do one thing at a time. You should like A/B test things, right? If you change everything all at once, you're not going to know what actually made a difference. So, hey, maybe I just need to tweak the template that I'm using for my outreach. Maybe I need to try being more like personalizing things more. Maybe I'm being too generic. Maybe I need to, and then at some point, even like looking at your services or your products and like, is there something I need to tweak here? Right. But we just keep iterating, but you can't start iterating until you get started.
Exactly. So, we talked about you're never going to have perfect information, but you do want to do some planning. So, at what point is planning enough and now it's time to jump in? Like, how do you decide whether you've hit that hurdle?
Yeah, I think you can usually, I know I personally can feel it. I start to get this like um what would I call it? Like it's like that feeling when you ate too much. It's that feeling when you went to like if you eat at a buffet and you're like, I'm trying to get the most for my money. I'm trying to like taste all this delicious food, and you eat too much, and you're like, I'm like that food was so good, but I slightly regret the last 15 bites I took or whatever because now I don't feel so great, right? I start to feel that way with knowledge. I start to feel that way with whatever I'm, yeah, like when I'm listening to too many podcasts, listening to what and not making a move on something. It's this like knowledge obesity that we can get where it's time to make a move, right? So you could wait for that feeling, or you could just create a personal rule for yourself that's like, I will allow myself to think about and process and brainstorm and contemplate, for anything, for any idea I have. I'll allow myself, 5 days of that. And then I have to either do something about it, or I just need to write down what I thought about and tuck it away, save it into my system for the future. Maybe even put it in a reminder where it pops back out to me a year from now. But I have to like put it somewhere so that I can focus on something that's actually actionable. If I'm not ready to take action on this and I've been spending days or weeks thinking about it, then it's time to tuck it away and focus on something else that is actionable for me, right? So I mean, those are a couple ideas. There's different systems you can, but like at its core, it's kind of the GTD, the getting things done mentality, that if you're capturing things into your inbox and you're clarifying those things, when you do that every day, you're deciding what is and is not actionable. And every week in your weekly review, you're deciding what actions you're going to focus on this week. And so then you don't end up caught up in that loop. So that's what, again, I go back to the David Allen's Getting Things Done, the Art of Stress-Free Productivity. Look at that model, but there's a few different options there for you.
So yeah, let's kind of dive into the flip side of the coin. We've talked about not getting started on enough things. How do you stop, jumping into too many pools and spreading yourself thin? Or like, when do you know that okay, you've taken on too many projects and this needs to go on the back burner? Like, how do you kind of prioritize and focus on the important things and avoid starting new projects that are going to kind of divert you away from your intended goal?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm kind of dealing with that this month where I have like uniquely extra time this month, and I'm trying to do everything because that's how extroverted intuition is. My co-pilot processes. It's it does not have a sense of time. That cognitive function has no sense of time, and so there's just this like, ooh, these are all great ideas. Let's do everything all at once, right? Um, and then what happens is then I quickly burn out. Like I might have 2 days where like this happened a couple months ago where I was like, ooh, this is going to be the perfect schedule and routine for me, and I'm going to get up at 4:30 in the morning. I'm gonna go to the gym, and then in the afternoon I'm gonna come back and do. And like I had planned all this stuff, and I lasted 2 days. And on the third day, I was exhausted because I was like not sleeping enough. I was throwing my schedule all off, right? And it was my extrovert intuition was trying to do everything all at once. So what we need to do then is like look at those things, be realistic about your time. You can process with somebody, you can process with AI, and figure out like, okay, what are the things that are truly the most important, and like also how much is all this really going to take. And again, GTD helps a lot here because you can figure out what are my next actions, what's the actual desired outcome for this project, what are my next physical visible actions that get me there. And maybe you do need to be working on all those projects simultaneously, but you only have so many hours in the day, so maybe you're taking two next actions on each project. But if you kind of follow that and you're reviewing daily, what did I get done today, what am I going to do tomorrow, and you're reviewing everything that's on your list weekly, then you'll know intuitively I do not have the capacity for everything I've put on my list. Especially if you're like bumping something out week after week after week, then it's like, hey, I probably should put this on what I have a deferred list. David Allen calls it the someday maybe list. And that can, people are like, oh, if it's on the someday maybe list, and that means I'm never going to get to it, right? So I call it the deferred list. Like, okay, I'm not doing this week, but it's deferred, and I will, hopefully do this at some point, right? So and part of that is being very realistic with yourself in a way that is not comfortable.
Do you ever have to stop ideas at the root? For example, certain people they can't go to the bar because it prompts them to drink. So like when it comes to starting things, you have different things that put ideas in your mind. Like, okay, I'm watching all of these podcasts, and now all of these ideas are flooding into my mind, and it's tempting me to start something new. Do you ever have to stop yourself from, say, for example, watching podcasts so you're not tempted to pick up new projects?
Yeah, I would say I don't think it's that exactly for me, because uh, you know, the working genius model is great for understanding where your strengths are. And for me, my primary genius is invention, and my secondary genius is wonder. Both of those are the ideation phase. Neither of them are the actual execution and implementation, right? So my mind is especially because invention is first, like my mind is constantly looking something and saying this should be better, and here's how I would like to do it. And I don't have time to execute on every invention that comes to mind, right? So the best thing I can do is to just like document it, and then so I have like a notes inbox basically where there's like a number of here's all the number of items that are in the inbox. It kind of works like an email inbox, which you could do that too. You just email yourself or text yourself or whatever, and that works as an inbox. I have an inbox, and so if I process that thing and say, okay, here's an idea, I'm going to put it on my ideas list, which I'll review, each month or quarter or whatever makes the most sense. You don't want to do it too frequently, but like, here's my ideas. And then look at, is this relevant now? And sometimes like, you know what, this isn't even relevant. Some of those things are like little automations that I want to make for my phone. And then Apple will push out an update, and I don't even need to do that anymore because it's built into the OS. So it's not even relevant anymore. Let me trash it. Other times, like, you know what? I really wish I had this, and I'm going to go ahead and take the time and create it. Right. But the flood of ideas never really stops. The purpose is that I get it into its place. However, I will say that what happens when I'm listening to too many podcasts in a particular like area is that I start to over focus on that stuff and emphasize that when my business and my family needs other things. So I have to, like, probably about once a month, I'm kind of thinking about, am I listening to the right things right now? And I go through different seasons with podcasts. Sometimes I'm listening to a bunch of long form stuff. Sometimes I'm listening to like the Morning Brew Daily, and it's just I want daily news. I want to know what's going on with in the world. But then that starts to get exhausting because I'm like taking in all this data that is hard to leverage in my business or family or personal life. That's just like all this other information I could be applying. Sometimes I'm listening too much to like podcasts that are coming out of Silicon Valley and the tech startup space. And I get like AI pilled on a ridiculous level where I feel so behind with AI. And then I like get out into the real world and realize that like 90% of the people around me have barely even used ChatGPT. So I'm like, I need to stop, feeling like I'm so behind. Right. So we have to like have limitations for ourselves on those things, set healthy limits, boundaries.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I think it's a great stopping point. So, do you want to leave our audience with any closing thoughts, and where's the best place for our listeners to find you at?
Yeah, I'm just going to reiterate that again. Like, analyze a little bit and then just get started. Whatever it is, just get started. And I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. Please, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. I love Spotify. That's where I listen to my podcast. So I'd love for you to subscribe on Spotify. But most importantly, if there's anything you need, any questions you have, please send me a DM and let's chat.
Awesome, man. We appreciate everybody who's tuned in. We'll catch y'all next time.
Thanks. Bye.